Now this interview has taken a long time to put together. Gary Power is the chief executive of Unashamedly Ethical, and anybody who's followed the Biz News story will know that this is very aligned with the kind of thing that we like sharing with our community, with our tribe. Because without ethics, without honesty, without fighting and beating corruption, you've got no chance, either as a human being or certainly not as a nation. And I've been trying to get to talk to Gary, who's a very busy guy, and his late father, Graham, who's just as busy. But we've got it. We've managed to finally connect, find the universe aligning, and, stand by for some interesting insights. Gary, I suppose the weight of legacy to a degree has to be weighing on your shoulders. Although you guys aren't, and your dad wasn't really a front page figure, he's very well known amongst the sector of the community who say, start getting yourself right, get yourself in order, get your house correct, be ethical, and then you can actually bring it to the rest of the world. So it's almost like you guys have been at it now for quite a while, and it's not just a South African organization, Unashamedly Ethical. It's global. It was your dad though, and he sadly has passed away, and you've now moved into those shoes. From the background of, your background as a family was as a construction business. What's it been like to take over the mantle from not just such a very prominent figure, but also the fact he was your father?
Alex, thank you. I think the success stories is what everybody knows about, and I'd like to maybe just go back to how I got here, just looking as a young businessman now in the world and growing up with the Power Group, Power Construction, which started in 1983 on our small holding in Gordons Bay when I was only 4 years old, and one bucky, one employee, which eventually grew up, or now, after 43 years, is one of the biggest privately owned construction companies in South Africa. And it was a privilege growing up with that, but I was also behind the scenes, just seeing how business was done. And I think a lot of people talk about corruption and they just think about the white envelopes. But I grew up seeing business as usual as, taking officials on hunting weekends, entertaining decision makers in the industry, from politicians to officials in the city who were decision makers on tenders, entertaining them at the box or the suite at Newlands Rugby and at the cricket. And so there wasn't necessarily money being paid, but there were favors and entertaining clients. My dad was a brilliant networker, and I saw this as normal, not necessarily corruption, but it definitely did impact the business. I later also learned about how my dad was actually part of this construction club, which used to get together monthly at a certain restaurant and decide who gets tenders, who needs work. And sadly, most of those companies, a lot of the big listed companies, are no longer around today. Many, Murray and Roberts that just went down. Sad news. So seeing that, and I just think to myself how many young South Africans and youngsters are seeing what's happening in the news and thinking this is normal. And it definitely isn't normal. And my dad turned his life around in 1999. And that happened to actually be the year I started working at the Power Group. But it took 6 years until he made the decision to not be part of this construction mafia or club anymore. Stepped away. It was hard. Lots of relationships, financially, strategically. It was a huge step. But I'm thankful in hindsight to say Power is still around, and I don't think it would have been around, which wouldn't only have affected our family, but the 2,000 plus employees, all the suppliers, and probably my dad's marriage wouldn't be around if he had carried on um, doing what he was doing. And I think that's where a lot of people ask, why am I not in power construction? I believe we need to do something different. And I do want to just congratulate yourselves and other news agencies and journalists and whistleblowers and the activists that are standing up and exposing corruption. I think that is much needed, but I also think that we need to do something very different. People that say, if you keep on doing the same things and expect different results, that's idiocracy. Not saying those agencies and anti-corruption agencies aren't needed. They're definitely needed. But we come from a different angle and I come from a different angle at Unashamedly Ethical to say, where's the alternative? Where's the hope? I think South Africans and business leaders are tired and become so discouraged. But we can make the difference. I can make the difference as a leader in my own family, in our organization, and in our community. It's up to me. I mustn't expect politicians or big CEOs to stand up. It's going to take a collective action, and I can make a difference in my sphere of influence.
And one of my obvious questions that I had for you was some use cases. Now, you've already given us probably the most powerful use case, which was your own family business. But what was that Damascene conversion? How did your dad? How did he decide that he doesn't want to be part of this rot anymore, and he actually wants to do things differently? As you say, 1999 was the time. What got him there?
I think there's a long story to it, but it was faith and really standing up for his Christian values. And then he was also challenged. The melting point eventually came to somebody, economist came and did a talk at Power on ethics. And it deeply touched my dad, and he just realized, even after 6 years of converting his life, there was still corruption taking place. There was still tenders. There was VOs on jobs that were being inflated. And I think it's about culture. It's really about a culture that was unhealthy, and there were still things being done in the grey. And my dad just saw the effect on us as a family and on business, and was convicted to not just put slogans like Unashamedly Ethical on the company buckies and on the buildings, but actually to, I think a lot of people talk about ethics, or they have nice words on their business cards and websites. It's actually about being intentful and implementing change. And so it was a difficult process, especially for the management. They even said, you've taught us this, so we've been doing this for 20 years. And it actually had to be strategically implemented in the company to make a difference. He saw the effect on the communities and people around him. So it was a tough but much needed decision. And yeah.
So if I understand correctly, he turned his own life around, or he changed his own life, found a higher power, was faith driven from that perspective, and then reassessed different parts of his life. And of course, the biggest part of this would have been the company. And when you look at the business practices from a different lens, and I see this often in the people that I engage with, when we talk after the occasion and relaxed and say, but do you really think that doing XYZ is aligning with your personal values? And quite often it's hard to defend some of those kind of things. And I guess that's what happened there. But you guys took it one step further. You've now created this organization where others can sign up for it. Just why not just stay within the power group and be unashamedly ethical yourselves there? Why go on this, what some people would call crusade?
I think the honest truth, Alec, is that, as I said, the power group wouldn't still be around. I can almost guarantee that. And there are many other businesses that won't be around anymore. And um, so it is, what am I going to leave my own children? What am I willing to accept? Am I just going to stay quiet and accept what's happening in our country? It is in decay, and I think we don't only have to speak about South Africa. Look what's happening around the world. And I think people, as I said, are feeling hopelessness. And I think the big question is, people say, well, what can I do? I think uh, there's ethical decay, but there's also abdication of leadership. We're allowing others to make decisions for us, which are going to affect not only us, our children. Um, the youth is a huge focus for us at Unashamedly Ethical as well, because they're going to be making our decisions when we're in retirement. They are future employees, and we need to do something drastically different, not just continue as is. Um, Otherwise, business and our own families are really going to be impacted, and we're seeing it. Often say, think corruption ethics is a lot like cancer. You know about it, you know the symptoms and what's going to happen. But to be truthful, many people only really care about it when it affects them or somebody close to their families. And I think that's the same with ethics and corruption. It's out there, but it's not out there. It's affecting you, it's affecting me, it's affecting everybody. Um, and we need to do something different. Otherwise, the powers and the other businesses are no longer going to be around.
How many businesses have joined up? How many people in South Africa and around the world are part of Unashamedly Ethical now?
So we have got 36,500 individuals and just over 14,500 companies or organizations in 144 countries that have signed the commitment form currently, and it's growing monthly. We've seen a huge increase over the last 2 years.
And how are they held to account? Because you clearly you're putting something. You're saying I'm part of this organization, but there's enough con men around who would like to ride on the coattails of those who are ethical.
I think that's a great question. So there is a commitment form which holds you personally accountable. It's for individuals, organizations that sign those commitments. We had an ombudsman in place, but we found that holding yourself accountable, there's got to be personal agency. Um, by signing a commitment and putting it up in the reception of your offices or in your own office is something to hold yourself accountable. There are a lot of compliance and governance agencies and people that come with a rules-based or stick mentality. And we've really found over the last 17 years that doesn't work. It doesn't change cultures, doesn't change character. Um, by others sticking to rules, it's actually um, living out values, not privately, but actually publicly taking a stand. So our commitment form is one of the processes that we really use. Um, and then it's about self-accountability.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
So let's just use an example here. Let's say that I work for a bank and the bank is part of Unashamedly Ethical. I don't know if they are, but just if you have any banks in there. And then someone who works for the bank sees actions that don't sit comfortably with them. They're moving against somebody who really is trying their best to repay the loan, say, or they turning a blind eye towards somebody who is who's really just playing the system, gaming the system. What gets done within that organization to either kick them out of Unashamedly Ethical, or at least to expose it?
I think so. To answer that, we're not going to kick people out. It's about the business. So we've got an ethics and action consultancy that consults the business to actually embed ethics and do training, so that it's not, once again, just a policy that people sign or slogans on the walls. That there's actually an ethical culture. Yes, you need whistleblowing policies, a code of ethics in a business, but people need to really understand that from top management to the grassroots. And so we call it applied ethics, not this high level ethics and going into the history of ethics, but really applying ethics in everyday life.
Okay, so I get it. It's in the organization, and if you see things, if you happen to be in an organization that claims to be to be a member of Unashamedly Ethical, one of those 14,000 businesses, and it's not applying its ethics, well, you can then bring whoever it is who's acting incorrectly to account, and say to them, this is what we've signed up for. But Gary, there's another interesting point though. And I'm almost sure your father was very involved in it was a watershed event in South Africa that not too many people now remember. But there was a gathering with Angus Buchan, and I think your dad was there, was it Ollie LaRue's farm in the Free State, where thousands and thousands of people came together and prayed. And that was at the depth of the Gupta era, where it seemed as though we were heading over the cliff. And I remember interviewing Angus about this. Angus Buchan, for those who don't know, is a spiritual leader who has got a huge following as well, and I think was one of your dad's close friends. And Angus said, what it still gives me shivers when I think about it. He said that at the end of the meeting, there was a whirlwind that came from nowhere. It was almost like the big boss was saying, "Hey, I hear you, and something will happen." And so help me, it didn't take very long, and the Guptas were history. So Gupta leaks came out, and all of those things. Now that, to me, being a faith-based person, is evidence. And when you look for evidence, you find it all around you. But were you there? Were you at that
I
gathering?
was at that event, and I concur that wind that came up was incredible. It was real. Yeah, it was an amazing experience to be part of it.
And the power of prayer, because at that stage, well, the fact that meeting was called was itself evidence that we were in a bad way in South Africa, and yet it wasn't too long that things started changing.
I think that is well said, the power of prayer, Alec. And I think even going back to 2000, when my dad got the vision for the Global Day of Prayer, which I don't know if you remember at Newlands in 2001, where people got together, and people forget that there were bombings in Planet Hollywood. There were eight, I think there was eight, I can't remember correctly, the number of bombs that had gone off. And on the day of that prayer day, they were actually caught in Belleville. And that's just another powerful testimony.
Hmm. What about right now? There are many people who would say we're in just as bad a state today in South Africa as we were at the height of the Zuma Gupta era. Is it not? Are we not in a place where similar type of actions by the faith-based community would be called?
Absolutely. I think that is critical. I think it's about collective action, Alec, civic organizations, businesses. And as I said earlier, not just screaming and shouting and pointing out the bad elements, but actually taking personal agency and taking action, coming together. Absolutely, that is. I agree. We are at the height of it. I don't think everybody realizes the current situation. Maybe we become numbed by the news, and We just think it's not our problem. It definitely is. And it is a serious situation. That's why when you asked earlier, why am I at Unashamedly Ethical? It's exactly because of this. I can see what's happening in our communities, and corruption directly leads to poverty. We all know that. We know corruption is our number one crime in South Africa, but so little is being done. Not enough is being done. And again, I'm not discounting the amazing leaders and people like yourself and organizations that are doing it, but we need collective action from citizens, including prayer and our faith, definitely. We can't all do it in our own power, for sure.
So what does that look like, that collective action? Just give us a roadmap.
I think good question. I think it's as I said earlier, it starts with us and our businesses implementing, not next week, not next month, really taking a hard stand right now and changing our businesses. That's where we spend most of our time as leaders. And I think while I say leaders, I think this concept that leaders are only CEOs of big corporates or famous people needs to change. Unashamedly Ethical, really, anybody that's got influence over someone else is a leader. That could be a teacher, a mother, a foreman, my own child, or own children in their school. We are all leaders, and it's about taking a stand, a public stand, not just and not just talking about it, but actually, they will say if you've got to tell people about it, then it's not true. They should experience it. So the paradigm shift is in people, individuals in our country, and I really believe most people are good people and have good intentions. We're not a corrupt country. There are corrupt elements, and systems aren't corrupt, people are corrupt. So I don't know if that answers you the question. If the question was more, do we need another global day of prayer and a Angus Buchan event? I can't answer that right now, but
well, when the time comes, I'm sure Angus will step up. What's he up to?
I haven't actually spoken to him in a while. So I have to be honest, I haven't spoken to him in a while. I do get his daily prayer reminders, but I haven't spoken to him directly in a while.
And what's next for Gary Power and Unashamedly Ethical?
I think it's really just advocating and sharing the positive side and the positive stories that are out there. We have these quarterly coffee events, and to just hear from people that are doing amazing work in our communities. They're out there. But I think we're so busy trying to do good that we don't always share the positive stories that are happening. And it's so inspiring just to take 2 hours out of our time, which is often difficult, and just to hear from people from all spheres from small business to big business to civic organizations that are really doing incredible work in our communities. And unfortunately, taking a lot of responsibility for government and other failures, but there are those that are really doing amazing work. And I think we're about connecting those, connecting leaders from all spheres, really saying, well, we don't have the answers, but together, even other anti-corruption agencies, we're meeting with them and saying, what are your strategies? What are you busy with? How can we work together? Now, I'm really seeing a need for collaboration. People have spoken about it for years, but I think collaboration was always about what can I get out of it. So you'd only put in a bit expecting something in return, and people are now seeing the actual dire need for working together to make a difference and localizing it. What can I do? I live here in the Helderberg. What can I do in the Helderberg? What can I do in Cape Town? In corruption, people can, it's systemic, so people make this big thing and feel disconnected that they can't do anything. How can I affect our government? And people have asked us to come into government and to come into Pretoria, and I said, that's not our role. Is business leaders and bringing up and connecting good people and challenging those people that are not doing things correctly, because they know what. Some people know it, some people are naive or don't know it, but really connecting, and not only local. We've got local partners from the US that phone us and say, well, we want to do business in South Africa. Please connect me with somebody that you know and and that we can trust. And similar any other country. And that's been amazing networking with business leaders in Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, and Africa. Our focus is really on Africa. So we're busy working with Mozambique, Kenya, with partners. So we don't like to come in with all the solutions. I think every community, every country has different problems. We all have corruption, but what are the actual problems in the country? So we do a deep search and research, and really want to work with people in those countries, and not come and say, yeah, this is the answer. We have all the answers. We definitely don't. But we have some amazing programs that do work as well.
It's a quiet revolution in many ways that perhaps will give, not perhaps, it will definitely give a lot of hope to some who feel hopeless. But just as a passing shot, we have an election on the 4th of November. There'll be 250 mayors, new mayors or re-elected mayors around the country. What would and that's really, Helen Ziller often says that that's where it matters. It matters at local. All politics is local. So what would your message be to those 250 people who are going to be so important in our lives come the end of, once they get installed after the 4th of November? Is there one thing that one message you'd like them all to have imprinted in their minds?
I think it goes down to personal agency, again, as individual, those 250 leaders, but supporting them as well. And I want to I'm not going to mention any specific cities, but we have had cities and provincial governments that have actually signed our political commitment forms and gone through some of our training as well. We had over 50 local councillors here in Cape Town that went through ethics training and have signed that commitment form. And so I think it's really working in collaboration with them as well, but holding them accountable as well.
What an extraordinary story. Gary Power is the Chief Executive of Unashamedly Ethical. I'm Alec Hogg from biznews.com.